Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Proactive Health Collective of Keene. I am Dr. Gene Clerkin with Monadnock Natural Health, and I will be leading this discussion today on, we're going to be talking about sleep issues. One of the most common things you see on every intake form is sleep challenges, right? So the rest of my panel, Rebecca?
Rebecca Montrone here, Wondrous Roots, and right down here in downtown Keene. And I am a holistic health practitioner, nutritionist, and herbalist.
Awesome. Anyone else want to introduce yourself?
Go, Allison.
My name is Allison Millar. I'm a licensed acupuncturist. I practice acupuncture and all 5 branches of traditional Chinese medicine in downtown Keene as well. My business is Basic Balance.
Awesome. Dr. Zabatelli.
Go ahead, Tees.
Good morning, Dr. Tisa Avatelli, Cheshire Wellness Center, also in downtown Keene, just on the bottom floor of Becky at Wondrous Roots in the Miller Forge building. We are a vitalistic chiropractic office doing a different technique, unknown to most people, network spinal, so a light touch, soft, gentle approach to chiropractic health.
Yep, and I'm Dr. Matt Abatelli, Cheshire Wellness Center. Nervous system health, that's what we do.
Awesome. So we'll jump right into it. You know, again, it is such a common thing. And the interesting thing about sleep is not only is it, you know, there's many things that can cause a sleep disturbance, but not sleeping well causes a multitude of other problems that come from that. So it's really an integral thing. Like when you're trying to heal, if you're not sleeping well, you're going to have a hard time, you know, rebuilding your body. Your brain health, everything. There's so many things that are connected with it. What are the, I don't know, complaints that you see most with that?
Well, it's always a question for me right off the bat, like when someone comes in with something and they also have trouble sleeping, do you treat sleep first or do you treat the other thing? You know, because if they're not sleeping, then the other thing gets a lot harder to treat. But back to what you're saying.
Yeah, I think, you know, like, well, for me personally, you know, we're looking at kind of a big analysis, and we're looking at assessing different things that can contribute to sleep issues. So the adrenal cycle, for instance. So we want to assess the adrenal glands. If they're off, we do a few tests for that, then that might give us some clues. If the liver is backed up and toxic, you know, people that are generally waking up between 1 and 3 in the morning consistently, especially if you associate that with like night sweats and things like that, you know, we're going to be looking at the liver. You know, there's certainly, when are they able not to get to sleep? Like if people have a hard time getting sleep, you know, is the hamster wheel going? And maybe some different techniques. And I'm sure Dr. Zabatelli would speak to this a little bit as we go through this. And then, you know, there's the people sleep well, but they wake up and they're still tired as they were when they went to sleep. So, you know, you're you know, certainly looking at the glandular system and, you know, also the parasympathetic versus sympathetic dominance, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Do you want to say anything about that, Dr. Zabatelli, about, you know, sort of the phrenic way that the system can get and how that might contribute to not being able to sleep?
Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
I'm sorry, my internet just completely blacked out. Can you ask me that again?
Oh yeah, I was just saying, you know, how like we're so frenetic. There's so much, you know, as far as like what's going on in our heads and energetically. And we talked about this in previous sessions about, you know, just the general vibe that we're swimming in here, how that might affect sleep, and, you know, what any thoughts you might have on that in regards to kind of how you address it.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, so now is definitely a hypervigilant state in terms of the state. And so what that does is that runs in our nervous system, our ancient fight or flight response, which is a tremendous survival value. So 10,000 years ago, to encounter a large predator on the landscape, say when the saber-toothed tiger was still walking the land, you've got 2 options really, fight or flight. We also know now that there is a freeze and appease aspect to that same system, but those won't serve you with a saber-toothed tiger. So let's just stick to fight or flight here. So your whole system is going to go into overdrive, basically, to make it super simple. And for darn good reason. You're going to exert all of your energy towards survival in one of two ways. So that's what happens then in a modern context is that we have sort of this like figurative saber-toothed tiger, which is in the form of stress or anything else that's going to cause us to be hypervigilant. So that's going to run that same program. Your body doesn't know the difference between an actual predator on the landscape and the perception of a threat or of an uncertainty even. You know, what about this? What about that? The what ifs, all of those things that sort of spin up. So as that does, we run our sympathetic too much, which is the fight or flight, at the expense of the parasympathetic, which is your rest and digest, or that wine and dine system that we all have when we're so relaxed. And there are some consequences, and I think that's what we're going to get into today.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this in a few sessions before. We do a test called the heart rate variability test, which actually gives you a look at those two systems and how they're operating and how they respond. And you know, consistently, when we're too much sympathetic and not enough parasympathetic, people aren't healing. And I think that goes along with sleeping. You know, we're resting at night because that's when we can sort of refocus our energy and our attention inward versus what you were talking about, that fight or flight situation. Rebecca, you had some.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, this is a fascinating subject, and it is a hugely common complaint. And the problem that I see too is that if a person has a sleep disturbance, like they're waking up every morning at 3 o'clock and can't get back to sleep or something like that, it's something that takes time to retrain the adrenal glands or to deal with the liver or whatever, you know, you get that glucose dumping or whatever is happening that, you know, the adrenal glands are how we wake up. They signal us when it's time to get up. It's because they raise our blood sugar. So there's so much going on, and this, when people have sleep issues, it's not a one size fits all. You know, for some people we can use this and it really helps them. I remember when I was in school, one of the lecturers was saying, you know, women who, okay, so they've got 3 kids, they had them like in short succession, so they probably haven't slept through the night, you know, in 6 years, right? Because something's always going on, and moms are good at that. You just get up, you deal with it, and whatever. But now, finally, at this time, you know, the adrenal glands are completely confused because they're not aware of when you're supposed to be sleeping. So she was saying, you know, if you could use just some gentle herbs to help, you know, just temporarily for a time, get you sleeping. Over time, your system will reset and will understand this is the time. So that's just one way we can kind of gently come in and use things that aren't harsh, or they're not getting you on Ambien or some sort of an artificial knock you out and not get real sleep. But just kind of, if we can use something, again, not because this is what you need for the rest of your life in order to sleep. This is what you might need for a couple of months, might be helpful. So now you're getting sleep, and now guess what? Your body just knows this is time to sleep. That's just one thing.
So
yeah, that's really good. One of the things that we really hear a lot, obviously, is I'm not sleeping, or I'll sleep, but I wake up really exhausted, and I'll get, you know, 12 hours of sleep, but I'll still be super exhausted. I've probably had a handful of people come in the last week or so with that very complaint. And we've got some really cool success stories, but one of the big things that we ask and that we try to find out is, what are your habits right before you go to bed? And usually technology is in somewhere in that ballpark of right before we go to bed. So some things to think about, especially if sleep is a concern, or even insomnia is a concern. What are you doing 30 minutes to an hour before you go to bed? Are you watching TV? Are you watching the news? Are you just watching a show? Are you watching anything, or on your phone or your tablet and just reading through stuff that can be stressful? Or, you know, even if you're just mindlessly drumming through Facebook, it doesn't really matter. But mindless. Well, you kind of mindlessly are. And so if you're constantly looking at a screen, it's stimulating the fight or flight. It's stimulating everything in your system. It's very different because like people will used to read books. I mean, still some people do, but if you read a book, you notice like you start to drift, like you're reading a chapter and, you know, if you can't sleep, read a textbook. I mean, you'll go to sleep like that, right? And so, or any of our, huh?
It worked for me.
It worked for me. Yeah, I was like, oh my God, I got a test. I started reading out, right? And so reading a paper, you know, rather than a screen is a very different response in the brain. And so things that we help navigate for people is trying to change those habits. And like, are you watching TV right before you go to bed? And they're like, yeah, I just watch it, because most people now have a TV in their room. So they just flip it off and turn out the light and try to go to bed. And then their mind is just constantly racing, right? And then they get up and then they do all these things and it's like, I can't go to sleep. And it's like, well, maybe if you gave your body 30 minutes to an hour before you go to sleep of no electronics whatsoever, it's really going to calm down your whole system. It's going to help that parasympathetic come back up. Sympathetic's going to drop, and you're actually going to get a better night's sleep. And we have people try it. I don't know how often they really do it, but we just suggest it, like give it a shot and see how your sleep habits change. And so
another little hack, and that, what, you know, to piggyback off what you're saying there, Tisa, is that, you know, in your settings in your computer, you can go in and change, you know, to where you have nighttime settings, and you can of course set that to any time you want, but it cuts down the amount of blue light coming in. So, you know, some people have it set to 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock or whatever. So, you know, it's still not great to be on that device and then jumping into bed or being in bed with the device, but, you know, any extra help you can get, I think, could be useful. So you can go into your settings, your display settings, and change that to nighttime settings.
Yeah,
yeah, night shift is powerful. I have it on my phone all the time. I can't even look at the blue light. It hurts too much.
Yep.
So you guys can see my glasses. You see blue, right? It's because I have blue light blockers.
Yeah.
I also have glare blockers. I have to tell you,
cool.
Technology doesn't bother me at all. I sleep like a rock, and I go to, you know, a lot of times I'm on my Kindle playing double free cell, and I just cannot keep my eyes open. And my sleep habits are very consistent and very wonderful. I sleep really great, and I am always well rested. So again, but I also have these EMF blockers on everything too. And I have the glare block, and I have all this, so it's not tedious on my eyes. So for me, I mean, I can just like be doing something like that, and I'm like, yeah, so it doesn't bother me, but I know for a lot of people, and again, I take good care to use things I know that block things that can be in the environment from these electronics.
Yeah.
What about those iPhone, like ones that track how you're sleeping? I often wonder if that's maybe not helping the situation.
Yeah.
Well, we muscle test in the office, and it definitely disturbs the energy in the body. No question about it. So we have to, and it'll change the HRV test too. And so, you know, there's two ways to look at it. We can have it on. What's that?
What test?
The heart rate variability test that looks at the function of the autonomic nervous system. So it definitely has an effect on that. But we, you know, sometimes we like to have it on just to see the difference, you know, to note that, to get people to become aware that, yes, having this thing around your wrist can really affect and, you know, change the energy in your body.
Yeah.
It is different for everybody.
Yeah.
This is new. This is supposed to be.
What is that?
It's supposed to be a 5G blocker bracelet.
Oh.
So it's magnet, and it's germanium, and something else. So, you know, I don't know. But it's just one of those kind of, again, like I have these stickers on my phone. I have them on my phone, everything that has, you know, I have these blockers. I'm like all about blocking that stuff. And so
I'd like to make a little suggestion here just for the group, just so we can have a little cohesiveness for our audience, is maybe we can talk about some of the negative outcomes of not getting good rest, what would that mean for people? Because we've talked about some causatives, and I think, you know, the theme I'm hearing is like, it could be a lot of things. It could be the gerbil in your head. It could be toxicities. It could be electromagnetics for sure. You know, so there are many things that can cause that, us not to sleep well and to not get good rest. What are the outcomes of that? And then I would also like to kind of maybe explore in each of your categories how you might intervene and what tips we could give people so that they can start to, you know, maybe do things to positively affect their sleep. So, you know, I don't know. And I'm really interested in hearing, because I've always had, you know, like in my office in Atlanta, we had acupuncture is there. And, you know, I've heard a lot of great things about how acupuncture really helps people sleep. So I'd like to hear at one point your perspective on that. Is there patterning that you see in there or things that you notice? But who wants to chime in about what is the consequence of not getting good rest?
One big, huge one is immune system disruption. It's horrible for the immune system. We see cancer much higher in people who don't sleep well. And I think that is, I read that book, Why We Sleep. I can't think of the author's name. Oh, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. It's here in my office somewhere. And that was one of his big points. And I think so that I'll just chime in with that right there.
Yeah, well, just to add on that, I would just say, you know, because we deal a lot with autoimmune disease. I've had autoimmune disease, my wife. One thing's absolutely certain, with all the other things you can do, whether you're detoxifying or supporting herbs or whatever, if people don't get good quality sleep, people that are in the throes of autoimmune disease need 9 hours of sleep, you know? And the one thing I can tell you, you know, in tracking my body over the last, you know, 20 years is that there are different things. If I get into foods that don't agree with me or certain toxic environments and stress, certainly, but if I'm not getting enough sleep, it's going to be, it's definitely going to affect my immune system. And, you know, I always look back after, like, I'm not feeling well. I was like, yep, I'm getting enough sleep. So.
Right.
And so insomnia or trouble sleeping in Chinese medicine, it's just a symptom. So it's not, you know, it's not the reason of anything, but it's
Right.
indicative that there's some imbalance going on in your organ system. And it can be a lot of different things. And again, it, you know, holds true to how you say there's so many different ways that it plays out. You know, you have to know, is it trouble going to sleep? Is it trouble that you're not staying asleep? And then there's a lot of symptoms in there that can point us in the right direction. But as a general overview, sleep in Chinese medicine is where so we have the yang of the body, where I always talk about this, the upward, outward, yang aspect. And then the yin is the like stillness, silence, the nothing. And the act of sleeping is the yang energy, like rooting inward and kind of being encompassed within the yin. So no matter what's going on with sleep, part of the treatment plan is always to build the yin. And that goes along with the, like, this parasympathetic nervous system needs to be online, because that's really the yin of the body. And actually what's interesting, one of the things that I like to do to start off a treatment, if we're really trying to build yin, is I'll open, there's 12 primary meridians on the body, and then there's 8 like extra meridians. So meridians are like pathways of the energy flow. And the sea of yin extra meridian goes on it's like a vertical line down the center of the body. And you open it up with a point on the wrist and a point on the ankle. And then I can hook up like an ion pumping cord to kind of strengthen the signal between those two. And I was just thinking about this because I knew we'd be talking about sleep, and I wonder about like how much of that as the sea of yin has to do with the vagus nerve pathway in there.
Yeah.
I never quite heard it. It makes total sense, Allison, when you're talking about it, but I never quite heard it. But would you say that, so the yin is pretty much congruent or connected to the whole idea of the parasympathetics, where the yang is pretty much connected in with the sympathetics? Like, are they kind of tied together that way?
Different language, but that makes sense to me, knowing what I know about yin and yang and my background in Western medicine, for sure. Yeah.
Oh.
Yin organ systems, I don't know how this overlaps, I'm just talking it out, but yin organ systems like hold fluids, and the young organ systems like are producing them and moving them. I don't know. I'd like to learn more about it. There's a lot of cool stuff coming out about like kind of translating Chinese medicine terms into Western medicine.
Excellent.
So I wanted to bring up this just for a second, because we were talking about how it affects. So this is that book, Why We Sleep, by Matthew Walker. So there's this chapter, this is sleep deprivation in the body. So he goes cancer, heart attacks, and shorter life. So some of the subheadings are sleep loss and metabolism, diabetes and weight gain. So talking about that, right? The leptin, ghrelin thing that's going on there when you're sleeping, weight gain and obesity, sleep loss in the reproductive system.
I know it has a huge effect on brain health too, because you're
huge,
sleeping
yeah.
at night, you're clearing out the proteins, amyloid proteins, and you know, they find that with like these dementias and things of that nature, that there's excess of that in the brain.
Yeah, it's the tau phosphorylation that is inhibited when you're sleeping properly. And then also sleep loss genes and DNA, not genes like you, but you know, I mean, so this is just one chapter on its effect on the body, but then talking also about the psychiatric and, you know, so yeah, I mean, sleeping is.
Yeah, just think about what kind of mood you're in when you're not sleeping every night, you know. It's like, you know, it changes your whole perspective and your whole.
How do you guys sleep? How would you what would you say about your sleep? I think mine is fantastic. What about
my kid hits the pillow and I'm out, I'm done. You know, I saw a meme on Facebook the other day, and it was like a wife sitting in the bed, and her in mid-sentence, her husband is like, you know, like just going right to sleep. I don't know if that's a pattern.
I sleep great too, and I need a lot of it. If I don't get 8 hours a night, I feel it, for sure. It's amazing how people are different though. Some people, I don't know if they've just like found other ways to adapt to it, but my boyfriend, he does not need much sleep at all, and he won't change. It's amazing, but it's.
So I typically get like 8 to 9, but if I get really charged and I'm on something and I stay up super late, like even to 2 or 3 o'clock, and that happens maybe once every 3 months, and then I pop up and get up and go to work, I feel fine the next day. Like I feel fine. I couldn't sustain that on a regular basis, but I don't feel like, oh my gosh, I didn't, you know, I only got 4 hours of sleep or 3 hours of sleep. But I think that's because I consistently always do get what seems to be right for me, because I don't set an alarm clock. I just wake up when I wake up and I get up.
Are you pretty strict about the time that you like stop eating, or like, no? It's fine with me if I'm snacking or I have a glass of wine or something within like an hour or even like 2 hours of sleeping. I feel way better if I don't do any of that. If I take a little bit of milk thistle too to help my liver like cleanse out, I feel a lot better in the morning too.
It doesn't seem to matter what I do, and I do a lot of various things.
Well, and that's a good thing to bring up, Becky. Everything's about momentum, you know, especially when you look at in terms of how the system's going to adapt to what's going on. So if you have great momentum in terms of your rhythm and you're getting to bed on time, waking up at a proper hour, feeling rested, I mean, you could stay up and not have any sort of issue whatsoever. I mean, the human operating system could withstand weeks of really not much sleep and then obviously need to recharge. So it comes down to what's the general day-to-day for you, you know, and how are your rhythms and how tied into the circadian rhythm of the sort of like the diurnal human operating system that we're awake with sun and we're asleep with moon, that we're tied into, you know, and then how much of that artificial light now, which has disrupted that natural pattern, you know, the Edison light bulb, what an amazing gift. And it extended the daylight. And that was really a huge onset. If we look back over what's happened to our people, that was a tremendously powerful tool. And it had a lot of repercussions. And one of those is disrupting the circadian rhythm.
Yes. Absolutely. Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. I mean, that's what, you know, that's what you did. I mean, when the sun went down and it was time, and that is what is said scientifically to be a big thing is, you know, you go to sleep when it's dark and you get up when it's light. You know, we can't all be in bed at 4:30 during the winter. I mean, that's impossible, but approximating that. And nature is what really speaks. That's why I love nature, because the critters, they're not influenced by anything but their instincts and the rhythm of life. And we should just observe them.
Yeah.
That's a great thing to bring up. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. It's okay.
Well, thinking about nature, right? So that the toggle between the sort of rest and digest and, you know, fight or flight. So the stress response versus the at ease in the system, right? So let's take a rabbit who gets a little too close to a bobcat, right? That rabbit's going to deploy every bit of resource it has to get away from that bobcat. And should it be successful, what will happen is that as soon as the threat is removed, all of those resources go right back to normal. Everything chills out and it goes right back to munching on grass or doing whatever it was doing before that. Or clover, I hear that's popular in the rabbit communities. You know, that in the human condition, what happens is that when our proverbial you know, predator on the landscape comes by, or just the hypervigilant or the stress, the deadline, the cop who comes up behind you with its lights on and then goes around you to get the guy in front of you, whatever it is that creates the stress response, because
Facebook.
of the momentum what's that?
Facebook.
Oh, yeah, right. So there's one more thing I want to say about Facebook in a second, real quick, which obviously, hey, Facebook, we're out there, and it's a tremendous tool, and we're grateful for all these ones and zeros flying through the ether. So we don't have the ability to go right back to normal baseline like the rabbit does, because of how we're conditioned and the momentum that we have in our lives. And one of the things that I think is really interesting, and I don't know if this is intentional or not, but when you get your, whatever this thing is here, Smarty Pants phone out, and you're flipping through Facebook, you're doing this like up and down motion to go through it, right? Which actually, if we measure this, stimulates the sympathetic nervous system. Which I always found so interesting. Ah, yes, the scroll up, the scroll up, the scroll up, no matter what you're looking at, not to mention the fact that light is projecting at you, which also affects the pineal gland and the cascade behind that. It's actually stimulating sympathetic. Whereas if you think about rocking a baby back and forth, that's actually a parasympathetic motion. So you've got parasympathetic motion like this, and you've got sympathetic motion like this.
And reading is like this.
Oh.
Like reading a book. I was just thinking about that as you were saying that.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, sleep's great. I love sleep. I love to sleep. And one of the things I noticed over my lifetime is I was suffering from sleep anxiety. Like it got to the point where I had something on my device or in my room that had to make noise. I don't know if anybody is familiar with how this works, but I was afraid that something was going to wake me up, because it would be so, basically sound or silence was deafening to me. It was so hard to listen to just nothing. It was weird. And so I would have artificial
White noise.
Yeah, white noise, like running water or crickets or something to go to sleep. And or you know, sleeping with, you know, your partner and afraid of hearing them start to breathe and not being able to go to sleep. Or, you know, recently it's been the birds in the morning, but it does change. And Matt has helped ease that. And he's like, look, first of all, lights need to go all the way out. I'm not a big fan of the dark, but if you turn the lights out and you just have windows, it's not really that dark. I mean, in all essence, go to Colorado, like it's never dark. Light pollution's crazy. But it's that the artificial light is keeping the stimulation. And then just the sound, the baseline sound. And he's helped me like through this care. So this care I feel has changed a lot, because we were talking about like the symptoms and the outcomes, negative outcomes that happen if we don't get enough sleep. And when I was in Colorado, I was realizing even with the care, I was still surrounded by artificial sound and light. And I was waking up very irritable. Like I just I also woke up at 5:30 in the morning, so it was a little earlier than I wanted it to be, but I was more irritable. I wouldn't take that to the office. I would get over it by the time I was awake, but irritability, like mood, is highly affected when we don't sleep, and then how we interact on our day-to-day, and that starts the energy of our actual day. So if we wake up and we're irritable, you know, you're going to be, everything's going to go wrong, and then you're going to be late, or you're going to hit traffic or something, and so you're creating your day. And this goes back to the law of attraction. Like if you just wake up, I wake up every day, I put my feet on the floor and I say a prayer saying, thank you so much for waking me up. Like, I'm so grateful to take on this day, even if I'm still tired. I just send energy of gratitude out and just be thankful. I also do it when I go to bed. I pray and I'm like, thank you for this awesome day, for giving me this opportunity. So the power of prayer is very important, and the power of gratitude is very important to set the tone of your day. And it does play into, if you're not getting enough sleep and you wake up tired, you're going to be a little more irritable. And then it's a progression through the day, how you affect and how you go through, how you interact with people, how you interact with your family, your coworkers. It's very important. And then we are stuck in a rut, which is a real thing here in New Hampshire. I just realized this year, or last year. You really do get stuck in that, and then you're not sure how to overcome that. So when people come in and they're like, not even, some people are fully aware that they're not sleeping, because it's always a question I ask. I'm like, how is your sleep? Some people, I'm gold. Some people are like, oh yeah, I'm up all night, you know, my mind's racing. And there's tension in the system, especially like Jean, you're asking, like the brain comes out through a big hole in the head and it travels down your brain, your spine, and goes all the way to the tailbone. And so if there's a lot of tension right here where your brainstem lives, whether due to your posture or tension or whatever it is in your system, it's gonna, the brain, the body are not communicating, because the nerves that come out right through here go up into your head. They affect your eyes, your ears, your nose, your mouth, your mental and emotional ability. It affects everything. And I don't think we realize how much of an impact this area has on our overall health, sleep included. So with this care, if we can feel that there's a lot going on here, and we help just through the gentle touch that we do, I hear success stories like within 2 or 3 visits, people are, one gal just came in, she just started care a week ago. She's like, I slept for 12 hours. We have little ouch and smile forms that we put, like, you know, the good and the bad, or the bad and the good. We want the good too. She's like, I haven't slept that long. I didn't even know I needed to sleep that long, but I slept for 12 hours and it was amazing. I took care of a mother in college, a mother of 3, and she had a 12-year-old, I think a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. And I started working on her and help. So we're talking about the parasympathetic coming online and helping the sympathetic stop running the show. And so at night specifically, and she comes in, she's like, oh my gosh, I slept better last night than I have for 12 years since I've had my first child. And it really does make a difference when you're decreasing that tension within the system. It's not about moving a bone and putting it back into place. It's about just decreasing overall tension. So the body is not like, it's like, oh, right. So it just creates more ease and more relaxation, more trust, and more safety in the system.
Nice. I want to talk about the light, because you brought that up. Now, like, I am a complete black, absolute black, you know, so, and if there's light around, and it might just be, whatever. If I go to a hotel, you know, I put a towel by under the door, right, where the light comes in, because they want to be, you know, I put a sock over the clock. I put, you know, it's almost fanatical, but it's like every little thing of light that is not natural is just like completely, I block it out. So it's much easier to control in your own environment at home. But, you know, I'll even, like, if it's getting light out and I really don't want to get up yet, I put a pillow over my head. And so I'm super, and the thing is, melatonin is created in darkness. So this is one of the big problems too with our artificial light. The only light that doesn't interfere is moonlight, which is so interesting because moonlight can be really bright, but it doesn't seem to interfere with things like other light. Like if you have light coming in from the street light right outside your window or something like that. So, but this is affecting hormones. So why do you feel irritable? Because your cortisol was not reduced because of the lack of melatonin, and your serotonin was not increased. And so you end up with that sort of messed up, hormonal balance that affects how we think and our mood.
Right. It's not dropping. The sympathetic is still staying online, and parasympathetic is the rest and digest. It's not able to do what it's supposed to do, especially if there's a constant imbalance of the two.
I want to hear a little interesting side fact. One of my clients is her father was a chicken scientist, and they would study like the effects of light on egg laying. And what they found was just a pinhole of light would have an effect on the egg laying. So it's amazing. You think like, oh, they need a certain amount of light and it has to be big and they have to see it, but it's just even a pinhole. So if that's true, then, even a pinhole of light, like Becky was talking about, might affect us and our hormones and all that.
Yeah.
Interesting, I thought.
I get another fun fact with, especially Dr. Matt, you're talking about like rhythms of things. In Chinese medicine, the way that the qi or the energy moves through our body, it's very structured. It goes from this organ system to this organ system, along through all the organ systems at certain times of the day. And so, and we've actually already mentioned it in the beginning, people waking up at 3 a.m. or between like 1 and 3 a.m. This is the time of day where the energy gets recycled. So it starts, your energy in your body always starts in the lung, and it goes all the way through and it ends in the liver. And at 3 a.m., that's when it starts from the liver to the lung again. And so what you can do is you can do the exit point. So there's like an entry point and an exit point on each of the pathways. You can do the exit point of the liver and the entry point of the lung. So the way to treat that. Yeah. Dr. Jean, were you saying something about waking up at 3 a.m. was like a liver detox thing?
Yeah, typically the liver goes through its process, in that between 1 and 3. And so it's just a clue. I mean, I think you have to look further. There could be other reasons, but that's what we see a lot is liver is toxic, yeah.
So in Western medicine, the liver is more active between 1 and 3 a.m.?
I don't know if it's in Western medicine or not.
Yeah, she means, because she thinks of liver, it's a totally different thing. Like I remember.
I'm trying to overlap them because it's interesting, because I was saying in Chinese medicine, the time of day that the energy is in the liver is between 1 and 3 a.m.
Yeah, well, I'm sure there's a relationship there. I think, it's probably taken on the, whatever you had to deal with in the day. And it's like, okay, now we're taking our resources out of like just the fight or flight or the survival of the day and putting into, okay, what do we need to do on the inside? Okay, well, we got to go through our daily brain cleanse. We got to go through our daily liver cleanse, So.
But the organ, the liver, the actual organ, the liver, does go through this, it'll do this glucose dumping during those wee hours that we're talking about. So if you have, so that's, I think, what we're talking about there. But what's really interesting is back when I was at an herbal conference, oh gosh, maybe 25 years ago, but Michael Tierra, who's head of who founded the American Herbalist Guild, and a brilliant man. And I was in a class and he said, we tend to, and because he does both Chinese and Western medicine. And he said, in Chinese medicine, we associate things like breast cancer to the liver. And, I raised my hand and I said, well, when you think about it, the liver is actually where you metabolize your hormones. Your hormones pass through there. And he was like, wow, that's really a cool point, So I think, even though we're looking at organ systems and we're looking at, this Eastern way of this way of like you do, Allison, It's interesting to see that overlap, like what might that be actually getting at?
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah.
A lot of this stuff too is sort of chicken or the egg, right? So it's like, is there a challenge in a certain system or, you know, meridian or any aspect of the human experience and physiology, you know, or is it what's happening habitually in terms of how we're living our lives and the choices that we make throughout the day and all of the bells that are ringing, calling our name that we need to attend to? I mean, are those what create the momentum that ultimately, you know, get us derailed, or, you know, Tisa, you're talking about stuck in a rut, you know? So we always say, like, you know, like bust my rut or pop my bubble, or like, you know, get me out of this thing, you know, give me something new. And there's an interesting idea too that I think sort of connects all of this, is that you probably heard of people talking about earthing.
Yes. Oh, yes.
I can't believe this is even a thing, but it's a thing, that you basically get yourself in the dirt, because there are so many measurable benefits in terms of the interaction between the human being and the earth that we live on. Wow, that's so. That at one point was not a thing. That was simply how we lived, and it's become a term now because we've become so disconnected. We have shoes on our feet. We sleep in climate-controlled environments with artificial light. We drive in these crazy cars at 60 miles an hour across the landscape with no idea what we're passing. We don't feel the rain anymore. And because of that, we have this concept of earthing as now a part of health, or the new one, and thank you, Richard Liu, for this one, vitamin N for nature. Like,
but it is all about, it's about radio frequency, okay? So this is interesting because they found that people who live in mobile homes, right, which are steel, and really disconnect them from the earth, have a higher rate of chronic disease. Truck drivers, one of the ways they can help with this is to have chains coming off the back of their trucks that are actually running along the road, because they're up here like this and they're in a cabin that is like all metal, and they are being completely disconnected from the earth. And so the grounding is a huge thing. That should be, that's really interesting, but it is really all about the frequency, the frequencies we're getting. So some people even, you know, build, you know, into their homes, these dirt grounding pits, and, you know, stand in them, and, or, you know, sit and put your feet in them so that you're getting this, you know, there's a lot to be said for that.
Isn't that such an interesting sort of like, I don't even know what to call that. So I guess I'll share a personal story. So I had the opportunity to live completely off grid once in my life, where I had a composting toilet outside of my 12 by 12 cabin that had a little sleeping loft in it. I had a water pump that was about 100 feet from the house that I had to go and manually pump my water. And what I can say is that there is something that shifts when we are engaged with the natural world on a regular basis. So if you have an outhouse, it doesn't matter what it's doing outside that day, whether it's nice or whether it's throwing down rain or snow or sleet, you go out in it. And while at first that may sound uncomfortable, there is an element to the health of both your physiology, nervous system, psyche, and your ability to interact with the world that comes from communing with the natural world on a daily basis. And being able to see that and experience that. And then also, previous life, I used to lead backcountry wilderness immersion trips, and we used to take teens out. And what I can say is that when you get teens out in the woods, you know, especially this day and age with all of these crazy gadgets and, you know, what's going on in school, they're in a monoculture of their peers, they're not in an intergenerational group, they're playing video games, they're trying to figure out what's going on, they're not getting a biologically needed rite of passage. So you get them out there and you get them in the dirt for a week, and there's something magical that happens, usually around day 4. Right around day 4, there is something that completely shakes loose. They've been in the dirt. Doesn't matter how they show up. They could be completely strung out or wound up or anything. Everything levels out. Everyone's sleeping. They're complete. The way they interact changes, the way they feel. And if you, some of you out there might know what I'm talking about. If you really get yourself out there in the dirt and as primitive as possible, you know, in sort of camping situation, because Becky, like you're saying, like those elevated metal platforms are not necessarily what we are designed for. Everything comes back online naturally, no trying.
There's also in the forest, I can't remember when I read this, but in the forest, there's also the trees and the plants and everything. Maybe some of you guys know what I'm talking about. But because they have to make all of these things, just how foods help us, right? A tomato is an antioxidant because because it's exposed to the sun, it has to create these antioxidants in order to survive. So in nature, all these things, all these plants and trees and, yeah, which are plants, but all of these things are exuding into the air. They are exuding these wonderful, healthful properties. So, I mean, being in nature is all about, it's about your psyche, it's about your soul, but it's really also about physical health. And again, think about why is walking on the beach so wonderful, right? Because you don't walk in the beach in your shoes, you walk in the beach barefoot. And you're in the sand and you're in the, you know, you're hitting the water and you're just connecting with this. That's what we're talking about when we talk about earthing.
My understanding of earthing is that it's like in nature, and you know, you were saying that all of these trees and whatnot, they exert these things, that they're exerting negative ions, and that negative ions are present in nature more higher concentration around thunderstorms, and at beaches and in rivers, and that all the toxins in our body are positive ions. So when you are like skin on skin contact, it's actually detoxifying and kind of grounding you down. It's like that polarity.
Think about alkalinity, all right? So because the negative ions, right? So just think about how being out in nature affects your pH. I'll bet it's a huge influence.
Yeah.
Tremendous.
A biomat. I have a biomat in my clinic, and it's 26 pounds of amethyst crystals in the mat, and then and then when you turn it on, it's like an earthing mat. It generates the negative ions, and then they come up through the amethyst crystals, which can amplify it. And it's amazing. I love it. It just really grounds me down. It feels awesome.
What do you do with it? Do you sit on it or stand above it, or?
They have different like sizes that you could sit on, but I have the full like mat that covers the table, so you lie down on it.
Oh,
and then
cool.
you can turn on the infrared heat too, which penetrates like a few inches into the body. It's really nice.
We find that coincides with care here too. So that biomat will actually be really applicable to like the first, 3, 4, 5 stages that we look at in terms of care. And then after that, there's like this flip that happens so that now the ions have all shifted enough so that they would like transcend using the mat at a certain point. So I would love, I'd love to hear if, as you continue to work, especially with regular people that start to, when their systems, like when someone's system is so online and so open. And so I'd be interested to see if you see them with continued growth in terms of the acupuncture and Chinese medicine, or if you find that it starts to like, I don't know, like buoy them or something.
Isn't that the PEMF technology? Isn't that basically, helping us because we're not grounding properly? That's what I've read about it. Yeah,
right. So when you need connection, and basically, so you go from like, just finding out where the connection is, through the polarity, through the stuckness, through the like actually getting back online, and then also starting to merge with the fact that like all of this stuff isn't even there, that we are perceiving in our minds. Like it would cover all of that. So like, what an amazing tool. So great.
Yeah. I think one of the themes I'm hearing here is like, if you can't do anything else, if you can't get help from a practitioner, whatever your thing is, one thing we can all do is get out in nature, and it's going to help all our problems, including our sleep.
Get outside, turn off the news and get outside.
Yeah, absolutely. We have bunny rabbits in our backyard, and they do love the clover, Matt. And they do, but I get up this morning and, I open up the French door, and I've got my bird feeder, and I go out there and I feed the chipmunks and the squirrels, and it's a beautiful garden back there. And this is like you know, this is magic, right? This is just magic. And we need to be doing that. Just even after, Tisa, you did my entrainment last night, we got that downpour of rain just when I came back up here. So I didn't go home, and it was just so beautiful just to walk around, because we have beautiful windows up here, a lot of window space, and just to watch the rain pour down. And I had some music on, and I was in here by myself, and it was just really wonderful. But we need to take advantage of those moments, and we have to do it, because otherwise, you know, we're just missing out so much.
Yeah, and to accelerate that, so there's a few little things that would really help, right? So first is that, and this will be quick, that you'd have a sense of isolation is important. So a sanctuary like you're talking about, Becky, is awesome. Like you might have that right on your front stoop, your back porch, but having a sense of isolation is really, really important. Second is that obviously there's no distractions, so you're not walking out there with your cell phone or any other gadget. And third is that time matters and frequency matters. So 20 minutes a day, you know, going back to vitamin N, you know, for nature, 20 minutes a day, because it will absorb emotion, it will reset the system. The closer you are to the ground, the better. If you're comfortable sitting right on the dirt, I highly suggest it. Most people walk in the center of the trail and hold nature at arm's length. If you can break through that, please do. And the other thing is that we always say, if 20 minutes, if you don't have 20 minutes to sit out in nature, then you probably need an hour.
Yeah, very well said. I do want to just go back to one of my favorite lectures at a conference years ago. I keep talking about these things, but was Daniel Gagnon from Herb Farm. And he wasn't one of the flashy, you know, celebrity kind of speakers. And so, but he was the kind of speaker I love, because he was like so, the science was there. And he was saying, because I think when we talk about how we help people sleep, people will ask me, and I'm like, it's so not one size fits all. So we have different herbal things, but he'll be like, all right, so passion flower is for people who don't sleep because they're repetitive mind chatter, right? Skull cap is for those who are anxious but also have muscular tightness. Hops is for those who have digestive indigestion because they ate something that, you know, too much pizza or something like that. California poppy is for people who need to regulate their sleep depth. So you can have a bedwetter because they don't wake up, but you can have somebody who wakes up too much because they sleep too light. So, you know, we do some different formulas here, and I'm not advertising those, but I'm saying you really have to discern what's going on with somebody to try to see what are the best kind of things. What is it? Do you wake up and ruminate? You know, passion flower might be just a really good plant for you. Just turn off that brain chatter.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
Cool.
So I want to, there's a couple of questions that got.
Yeah, there's a good one in there, Gene, about the night sweats and liver for you. That's a good one.
So, you know, I mean, obviously when the body raises its temperature for different reasons, right? And a lot of times it has to do with immune challenges. So, you know, because they don't do so well when the temperature is raised. They do great at 98.6, but they don't do so great at 99 or 100. So the body might raise its temperature to deal with that. I think, you know, also just to note that, and when we're checking and monitoring, we find that there can be specific immune challenges within organs. And when organs start to break down, you know, as I describe it, as become dead and dying tissue, when it becomes weakened, that's when immune challenges like bacteria, funguses, and viruses and things always can manifest. And so, you know, we find that a lot when you do get the liver thing going. I mean, when I'm taking a history and somebody says, yeah, but I'm waking up between 1 and 3, 2 o'clock in the morning consistently, doesn't mean that it is a liver. It just means that I want to look there and test and just see, is the liver under stress? Why is it under stress? And typically there'll be a toxin and many times be some kind of a pathogen, typically in the liver, bacterial actually, in there. So, you know, that's one thing. So it's different for everybody. And, you know, we do have the advantage of you know, some kinesiology and be able to kind of hone in on these different things. But, you know, those are the things I'm looking at. One, do we have the hamster wheel going? And if that's the case, we need to be looking at, you know, maybe incorporating some respiratory integration before bed is always a great thing. When we have people do that exercise. I know Dr. Sabatelli do as well, for specific healing things that we're trying to accomplish. But it's funny how when people do that at night, it's pretty quick sleep aid, right? It's like, oh, I was doing it and I was asleep.
What is it? What are you talking
Somatic
about?
respiratory integration is just, you're basically, it comes from Donald Epstein's work with reorganizational healing, or 12 stages of healing, as he calls it. But it's exercises where you're using your hands with focused attention on your body to really connect to your body, and where we're holding tension that's like stuck energy, and finding places of ease and really connecting in with that. So just it's almost like a working meditation. I describe it as. There's lots of other things that come from it, but just the idea. Or if you could meditate, and those are things that you can do, or get out in nature to handle that frenetic brain stuff and energy. Certainly, if you have these signs coming up, with your sleep cycles, if the circadian rhythms, which is the adrenal. The adrenal should kick out the cortisol and be up high when you're supposed to wake up, and then as you go through the day and at night should be tanking, so that your body is ready to go to sleep. So looking at those cycles, you just want to look at the organs there that are involved in that, and then like we talked about before, looking at blue light, looking at those types of things. Just screen time in general, I think, is one thing to do. And there are lots of great herbs. And again, it's nice to be able to, I had, when this COVID thing started, one of my clients said, it was in a business meeting, actually, a BNI meeting. And she was like, I'm not sleeping. There was like a lot going on, a lot of stuff. And, we just muscle tested a bunch of things, and, the California poppy and the valerian and all this stuff. And for her, it was kava. And she got kava and took 2 in the evening. And, within a couple of days was like, totally sleeping great. And then once you sort of get things under control, then maybe you don't need those anymore, and you can like work on some of those other habits. But the liver thing could be a little bit complicated, for this forum here. But just to note that it's a clue, and when the body's going through a process, a lot of times it'll change its temperature in order to facilitate that process. Sometimes immune challenge, sometimes detoxification. Like a burning off of the toxins. So,
Jean, what if, so with the liver, yes, you have the toxicity and possible pathogens. Do you have any experience around emotion being held in the organ, like specific, like past traumas, like some really significant traumas that people feel like we understand the tension in the system, but how that emotion is affecting organ systems?
Yeah, I think, maybe the audience doesn't know this, but we all know this, that you can't really separate these things. Like there's, in any situation that we have going on in our body, there's a lot of times a biochemical component, there's an emotional component, there's an energetic component. They're all come into play, which is kind of why you can take different approaches and still get results, because you're basically getting through that window of that particular component, and that can be enough to create a shift. So yeah, absolutely. It's not something that I really, as a practitioner, delve into. I've read like Louise Hay and all those types of books which talk about, what this might mean from a standpoint. But, I know that in the work that you guys do, Dr. Sabatelli, that a lot of times, you have pain in an area, and, one of the techniques we've used, and I just did this with my wife recently, because she got bit by a tick and she was going through some uncomfortable experiences, and where we, place our hands on a place of ease in the body, and then go over to the place that the pain is, and sort of connect with that. And then, even making the sound of what that might feel like. If that had a sound, what would it be like? And basically what you're doing is you're matching that vibration, because every tension or pain area is like a stuck imprint or a vibration. And if you can match that vibration, you can, in sort of layman's terms, break that up, I guess, in a way.
Wow. I want to say one last thing for me. one thing we didn't talk about, and that's the lack of antioxidants. So that's how glutathione is, low glutathione is related to insomnia. So glutathione levels get lower in people every year. So we know that there's that whole connection in the brain with the antioxidants. And what's really interesting is glutathione is the chief detoxifier of the liver. But so, you know, you look at that, and we also look at, we're in an environment where our antioxidants are being constantly depleted because of our environment. The electromagnetic, the glyphosate, the poisons and the toxins are sapping us of our natural endogenous antioxidants. And so that's really key too.
Yeah, I think so. You know, just to wrap up where I would, you know, leave the audience with is like, there's many ways that you can approach these things. All of the things matter. And if you do one, you know, you don't want to necessarily give up. Again, it's a cumulative effect of all these things, and you can just take little steps forward, and you'll find, I think, that the more you add to your bucket, so to speak, in the different ways that you can affect it, whether you're talking about antioxidants and making sure that you get plenty of them to replenish, whether you're dealing with your frenetic mind and calming your nerve system, or, you know, taking care of your organs and your hormonal balances, they all matter. And, you know, it's why I think we all take a holistic approach, because we're not like one size fits all, but really want to look at all the big pictures. And so when you're out there, you know, try, you know, start with the easy things that you can take care of yourself. Nobody, you know, nature's free at this point anyway. You could still go out and for now. So take advantage of it. And you can change the blue light settings, and you could even go out and get blue light blocker glasses and some, there's devices that can, you know, help deal with the electromagnetic waves. There's so many things that we can do. Maybe we should put together a list or something for people and just, you know, give them, here's the things you can do. And then some of the things require help of a practitioner, you know, to maybe help you with an herb or something to get you over something, or help your nerve system calm down, or help balance your energy, or look at your organ systems. You know, those things, you know, we need help sometimes with those because things have gone too far, but there's definitely things we can do on our own.
All about momentum over time, and all these things are made to empower you to help to create momentum toward what you already are, which is an incredible being who has the ability to regulate all of this stuff on your own. These tools can help speed up the process.
Well said.
And yeah, just to reiterate, it can be so many things, you know, the different patterns in Chinese medicine. There can be a connection between the spleen and the heart, and that's causing your digestive, or it could be liver qi stagnation. So start somewhere and you'll figure stuff out, and we can help you out. We're here if you need us.
All right, that's awesome. I've had a great time. I just I always feel better after doing this session with you guys. So thank you all again. Thank our audience for listening in. Those of you who've hopped on the Zoom stage, we do have a Facebook. We all have Facebook pages, so we've all, I think, forwarded that to our Facebook pages. So if you're on there, you can certainly share that with your friends. And we have a YouTube channel as well, so you can find us on there, and you can find our past talks. If you're getting on here for the first time and you're interested in kind of the things we're talking about pretty much everything. So check out some of those past talks.
Thank you.
All the love.
All right, everyone.
Again, everybody.
Thank you so much. Have a great day. We'll see you next week.
Next week.
So long.